For many years, Phuket has been the most popular island in Thailand, known for its beautiful beaches and its wild nightlife scene. But over the past couple of years, Phuket has become something very, very different. Welcome to Thailand's quarantine island. The stunning shores of Phuket used to welcome around 10 million tourists every single year. But the events of 2020 turned even its most popular areas into complete ghost towns. A scene that was sadly replicated across the entire country. So naturally, Thailand looked for ways to bring back tourists as soon as possible, but in the safest way they could. And on the 1st of July 2021, they launched something called the Phuket Sandbox, a quarantine experience like no other. As long as you're vaccinated, you can fly into Phuket and spend 7 days on the island, but not locked up in a hotel. You can freely explore the sites for that entire time, so long as you take a PCR test before you leave your home country, and take 2 more PCR tests when you arrive in Thailand. And after that, you're free to enter the rest of the country. In the last episode, me and my girlfriend Emma flew from London Heathrow into Phuket, where we took our first PCR test right there at the airport, and waited in our government-approved hotel room until we got our negative results 5 hours later. So then, we were free to go. At least until that next test that we'd have to take on day 5, so more on that later. Because in this video we're going to drive around to several areas of Thailand's biggest island to show you exactly what things are like on the Phuket Sandbox right now. But let's start out where we based ourselves, in one of the island's most famous beach towns. And to be honest, I can think of worse places to quarantine. Give us a wave. Hello and welcome to Kata Beach. Look how beautiful it is here. This is where we're going to be spending the whole 7 days of our Phuket Sandbox experience. So I guess I should show you around. Kata Beach, or Kata Yai, is in the northwest of Phuket and stretches for 1.5 kilometers along the coastline. It's known as a surfing and sailing beach and actually hosts one of the biggest regattas in Asia, but you wouldn't have known that when we were here, thanks to the chilled out and relaxed atmosphere down here on the beachfront. The sand here is super soft, and the water, it's that clear blue colour. And there's loads of things to do here as well. It's a really lovely spot. I'm so happy to be back. This area has always been known as one of the more family-friendly regions of Phuket. Down here on the beach, you can grab yourself a sunbed for 100 baht each, and there's lots of vendors selling fresh coconuts and cold beers. But you'll also find plenty of options for water sports or boat trips here if you want them. And when you get hungry, you have plenty of great spots right on the seafront. There's a wide selection of food vendors at either end of the beach road, and they're open all day and into the evening. And this is a big part of the reason why Kata Beach has one of the nicest atmospheres around. You'll also find a full-on clothes and souvenir market right on the roadside, but we're in Thailand, so it's all about the street food for me. As well as the stalls right on the beach, there are a couple more food courts in town, where you can pick up a wok fried dinner like a pad krapao for as little as 50 baht. So Phuket might be one of the most expensive places in Thailand, but you don't need to pay much to get a fast and tasty meal. Of course, there are many restaurants, bars and cafes here as well. Right in the south corner of the beach is a cool little reggae bar and a selection of really nice fish restaurants, all giving you a great view back towards the beach and those amazing sunsets. All of these features help to give the Kata beachfront a really great atmosphere overall, where the pandemic feels very far away. But unfortunately, the seafront doesn't show the full picture. We stayed about 15 minutes walk away from the sand, and on the main road leading down to it, you can tell that this area has seen some change. I've never been to Kata before, but it's clear that parts of this town have suffered badly during the last 2 years. There are many businesses that have shut up shop, with a for rent or for sale sign hanging in almost every other window. But like I said, things do get much busier as you get down to the beach itself, and there are plenty of places to eat, drink and watch live music, so this is far from a ghost town. But to gain some more perspective on our surroundings, we headed up the steep hill to the nearby Karon viewpoint, where you can see that Kata is also sandwiched between 2 other beaches. To the north you have the much longer Karon beach, And in the south, you have Kata Beach, which is the smallest of the three, and it's probably the nicest for swimming thanks to that amazing clear water. We rented a bike and headed up to Karon Beach, which also has its own town and lots of hotel options, but I've got to say, it was much quieter here. There were plenty of restaurants and shops open at lunchtime, but there was also lots of shuttered fronts and for sale signs. And this is just the reality of Thailand tourism in 2022. But just a few kilometres along the coast, there is another place that feels much less affected. A lively town that is a real Southeast Asia legend. We got back on the bike and headed up the west coast, towards an area that in many ways feels more like a city than a beach town. If you've heard of Phuket, then chances are you've also heard of Patong Beach, the biggest and most lively resort town on the whole island, which is of course known for the Bangla Road, one of the most iconic nightlife streets in the whole of Thailand. But of course, nightlife is one of the industries that has really suffered over the past 2 years due to the pandemic. So I'm really interested to see what places like the Bangla Road even looks like right now. So let's go and take a look. Patong Beach stretches for 3 kilometres along the entire length of town. It's a place where you can choose to relax on sunbeds with a drink, or even try something a bit more exciting. And just back from the sand, you'll find a busy road lined with lots and lots of restaurants and bars with both Thai and popular Western chains. But we came here for one reason in particular, to take a look at that famous nightlife. And really, there's only one road to head towards. The Bangla Road is a bit of a legend in Southeast Asia. Along with Pattaya's Walking Street and the Koh San Road in Bangkok, this has been one of Thailand's most popular nightlife hubs for decades now. And it's absolutely packed with lots of pubs, clubs and go-go bars. The elaborate decorations here make it look a bit like some sort of adults amusement park, and I guess that's the main idea. But of course, visiting the Bangla Road in the daytime is a bit like a non-alcoholic beer. You get an idea of the flavour, but it's just not the same. So we paid another visit after the sun went down, when this street really comes alive. During these times, there are checkpoints at both entrances of the road where they just check your temperature, but then you're good to go. And back in January 2022, the Bangla Road was definitely not quiet. We ended up being quite surprised by just how busy the walking street was during these times, and it seems like the local authorities were too, because they announced an 11 PM curfew the very next day. Unfortunately, a trip to the Phuket Sandbox is not all fun and games. As I mentioned at the start of this video, day 5 brought around yet another COVID-shaped roadblock. Good morning and welcome to day 5 here in Phuket, which means it's time for yet another PCR test. We've got an appointment down at a swab clinic on Kata Beach, so fingers crossed it all goes well, and this is the last test we have to take in Thailand. We were actually quite worried about this test, mainly because our flight from Abu Dhabi to Thailand was very busy. And if you did test positive in Thailand at this point, there was a high possibility of being sent into hospital quarantine, which definitely doesn't look ideal. But all we could do at this point was cross our fingers and hope for the best. Our hotel printed out all of the documents we needed, so all we had to do was find our name on the list at the entrance and hand over the documents. You then get a swab kit, and somebody dressed in a full-on hazmat suit puts that swab right up your nostril. After that, you get a QR code to check your results later on, and in the meantime, we were free to explore Phuket once again. and we set our sights on one of the biggest landmarks in the area. Well, that's the swab done. It was really quick. There's barely any queue, so all we can do now is wait. It says the results should come back within 24 hours, hopefully before 10 p.m. So that's it. They only did one nostril this time, and mine was okay. How was yours, Emma? Was it all right?
Horrible.
Painful?
I feel dirty.
Violated. We are now on our way up to go and see the Big Buddha, which you can see from all over this part of Phuket, sitting right on top of the hill. We're just getting a song tao up there now. It's cost us 1,000 baht for the round trip. And the temple itself is partially finished, but what should be really good is the views from up there. The Great Buddha of Phuket stands at 45 meters tall, making it the third tallest statue in all of Thailand. It sits on top of Naked Hill in the Chalong area, so there is a steep winding road leading up to the top, which is why we ditched the bike for this. But the viewing deck alone makes it well worth the climb. The viewpoint here looks right down over Chalong Bay, and it really is stunning. But of course, that's not really the main event. Construction on the Big Buddha began in 2004, and the main figure itself is primarily made from concrete covered in striking white marble tiles. There is a temple complex at the base of the statue, which is where you'll start to see that the whole place is around 80% finished. The main figure himself is done, but in the areas around the base, you can see that it's still a minor construction site. But despite that, it's still well worth a visit, especially if you're staying in this part of the island. At the temple, we gave a small offering in hopes of some good fortune, and lo and behold, our PCR tests finally came back, and it was all good news. Get in. So we've now explored a lot of the main tourist towns and attractions along the coast of Phuket, but now I want to check out the most populated area of the island, where most Thai people in Phuket actually live. And for this, we needed to head over to the east side of the island. You see, Phuket isn't all just beaches and nightlife, but many tourists never venture away from the resort towns of the west coast, completely missing out on the island's bustling capital. And Phuket town is an area full of rich history and some pretty stunning architecture. Well, I can honestly say I've never been anywhere like this before in Thailand. The architecture actually reminds me more of Georgetown in Penang. Really interesting. Phuket has a long history of tin mining that brought together communities from all over the world. Most of the mining was carried out by the Hokkien Chinese, but in the early 20th century, European mining companies also joined the party. And it was around this time when the distinctive architecture started to appear. Much like its Malaysian counterpart, Phuket Old Town is known for its narrow streets lined with colourful Sino-Portuguese architecture, a blend of European and Chinese styles known as Chinese Baroque, features that have made the whole area a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But that's not the only similarity to Georgetown. You also have a hint of that famous Penang street art scene, mostly reflecting some of the local life here on the island. But of course, there's some pretty mad stuff too. These days, most of the buildings are open for tourists to visit. You'll find many quaint traditional coffee shops and cafes, as well as little shops and restaurants and even some boutique hotels. But the real highlight of the Old Town for me was the food. The melting pot of cultures here has created a brilliant food scene, and there was one specific dish that I really wanted to try, something called Moo Hong, the signature dish of Phuket, which is essentially a pork belly stew, but that probably undersells it. During my research, one name kept popping up as the best place to try Moo Hong, a little family-run restaurant called Raya, one of the most famous eateries in the whole Old Town area. Right then, here it is. Just gonna get a bit of that pork belly onto the rice. Oh, wow, look at that. And now make sure we get a little bit of sauce as well. Put that on there. Let's do this. long. Oh my god. That's so good. Salty from the pork, but it's also got a really sweet edge to it as well. Well, that was without a doubt the best meal I've had in Phuket. It was absolutely amazing. It was rich, it was salty, it was a little bit sweet, but you know, no spice, just a little bit peppery. You know, I wasn't sure about a pork stew in the heat here on an island that's famous for seafood, but it was really good. You've got to try this when you come to Phuket. Now, there's just one more aspect missing from this sandbox picture. As a part of the requirements, you need to spend all 7 days in an SHA government-approved hotel, which complies with certain COVID health and safety standards. So let's take a look at what a sandbox hotel actually looks like. And if you're imagining some sort of jail cell, well, it's a little bit better than that. We booked our week at a place called the Palmery Resort, which is only about a 10-15 minute walk from Kata beach. The room itself was very nice and spacious, and it was also pool access, which is a really cool feature that we've actually never had before. And it only cost us £45 per night, including a buffet breakfast. Almost every decent sized hotel on Phuket is now SHA Plus certified, so there are plenty of different options for all sorts of budgets. So with that, our Phuket Sandbox experience has come to an end, and it's been really surprising in more ways than one. First of all, this island is way better than I thought it would be. I don't even know why we avoided it for so long. And secondly, the general sandbox protocols have gone by very smoothly. Sure, there's that anxiety when you're waiting for the testing, and you do have to wear masks in public places, which is going to put some people off, but overall, we've had a really, really good time here on Phuket. But now it's time to set off on a brand new adventure. Tomorrow morning, we go in search of the beach.